Hello, I'm Bruce Sawalski. I'm author of Canadian Wilderness Survival and chief instructor of the Boreal Wilderness Institute. Today, I want to talk about something very, very important, and that is sleeping bags. Now, I'm going to have to move around a little bit on this video, but that's just how that's going to work. So if you like to learn real survival knowledge, then please support me by following me on YouTube and liking this video. So first of all, before we go on in anything, let's talk about the two materials that the best quality sleeping bags you're going to have are going to have as a fill. So now let's talk about sleeping bag fill before we even talk about sleeping bag design. So number one would be quality grade A goose down. The way Kalani Mountaineering would have named it as grade A, as absolute high quality. So with that, let's talk a little bit about down. So first of all, you rarely hear the terminology grade A or grade B anymore. And what you've been replaced with is what they call fill power. And the fill power is a number, generally for down anywhere between about 450 to 900. Technically, you could have 1,000, but it's only in the absolute highest quality sleeping bags and at a very expensive price. So basically, when I talk about grade A, that's going to be between about 700 and 1,000 fill power. And that's, or terminology as small feathers. So why does it make a difference? Well, it makes a difference for quality, and we'll talk about that in a second. But why there's so many different terminologies is no one can decide. There's no standard. Nobody sets, the government doesn't set this and say, this is what you have to do. So every company gets to be a little bit different, and everybody gets to invent new things. Grade B is basically large feathers, or something less than 700. And they're just the size of the feathers. For a lot of cases, it's going to be what creature created the down, and where did it grow? So a goose down is very, very, very good down. That goose comes from the northern hemisphere, let's say the United States or Canada, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, the UK. It's got to be a lot warmer. It needs better down because it's colder. If it's from the southern United States, or worst of all, down from someplace like Vietnam, a goose in Vietnam doesn't need to be very warm. And so the feathers tend to be worse quality. And that's just the way it works because they don't need to be warm. So better grade down is going to be a better sleeping bag. Something like this Kalani Mountaineering Expedition bag, grade A, probably 900 weight down, might be 1,000, but it's at least 900 weight down, makes a huge difference. It also makes a huge difference in price. So what's our second choice? Our second choice is a synthetic. So synthetics like this. And 3M makes dozens of different synthetics. A lot of the companies have them. There's a lot of trade names out there. And what we say is the synthetic material 100% synthetic? Yes, so that's number one. If it's 100% synthetic, therefore it's plastic and it's long strand. So we get it top to bottom of the sleeping bag with one strand. Then it works, right? That's the real deal with that. And now the only difference is this synthetic is going to be heavier than this down and not as compact. Although if somebody was to make a Primaloft sleeping bag, for example, which is a down replacement, it'd get pretty darn close. That's just the way it is. It would also get pretty darn close at price and have a lot of the same problems. One of the things that we can think about is a jacket or a down sleeping bag is going to be a lot more damageable compared to a synthetic. Synthetics are robust, they can take more damage, they can get wetter, and they can be dried quicker, and that's going to make a difference. But you're going to carry more. Now, if you're not carrying it on your back, it doesn't make a difference. If you're not going into tough situations and you're just out camping in a nice, beautiful national park, it's not going to make a difference. If you're trying to lighten your pack up to the absolute lightest you can, and weight is everything in your world, then it's going to be a grade A goose down. So that's just going to be the deal. Now, that's material. The next thing we need to talk about is design. So I'm going to go back to this and show you this thing here. So the very first thing we need is a foot box. So there is a foot box of my Kalani Mountaineering. You notice it's round. It doesn't have to be round. I've seen rectangular ones, and even a triangle, it would work. And it's designed so your feet can be upright here and you won't poke through there. So my feet won't poke up through the edge of the bag, because if they do, then they're going to cause a problem. Let me simulate that with my hand. If that's my feet there and it's poke, it would poke through here. So a foot box lays it upright and my feet can be there. In a foot box, it has to be a box, meaning that the zipper can't go to the end. So that's what we call a 3/4 length zipper. It has the quarter or third or whatever at the bottom. This is an extra long bag. It's got an extra bit of space for gear and stuff like that, and that's all fine. That's a nice added bonus. Adds a little bit of weight, of course, but that's what it works for long, taller people as well, and that's a bonus, right? So that's what we're doing. So a full foot box is there. Zipper wise, we want a 3/4 length zipper. Now, a quarter length or no zipper at all would have one advantage. Well, that advantage of no zipper would be that the zipper is always the weak point. So what happens is, this is your draft tube here. So there's your draft tube, and the weak point of the bag is I'm going to sleep against this zipper. And if it's too thin of a draft tube, this is going to cool me down, because that zipper has the most conduction. It doesn't matter if your zipper is plastic or metal, it will still have more conduction than down has. Down has very little conduction, which is why we use it as a sleeping bag insulation. So what happens is I sleep against it, it's going to make a difference. So if I had a thicker draft tube, it would be better. So let's take a look at this wiggy bag here, and you'll notice the size of the draft tube is massive, right? But that means that when I sleep against it, there is no way I lose any warmth at all, right? Here, in this Kalani bag, the draft tube's a little bit smaller. Next thing we're going to need to look at is the hood. So I'm going to bring this hood up here, and I'm just going to, give me a moment, I'm just going to zip this thing together. All right, so here it is zipped together, and what you see here is a strap piece, and there is your draft tube in there. The hood itself has to work with a single pull. You got to be able to pull it like that, right? You don't have time inside there, and this end has to become as small as possible, right? So what you're looking at there is as small as possible. So that is the weak point of the bag. The weakest point of the bag is always right here on the edges. Those side pieces, if you want to think of it that, on either side of my shoulder is the weak point of the bag. And so here you'll notice that the hood is very close to my head, isn't it? And doesn't actually have extra bulk room. What happens is when it's 0, -5, -10, it doesn't really make much difference. But what happens when it's -30 or 40, as you twist your head just slightly, what you'll end up doing is losing all of the heat inside the sleeping bag, right? So a hood is going to make a difference. Now with that, I want to change sleeping bags for a moment and pull out this, right? So I want to pull out this wiggy bag. So just a moment, I'm going to zip this thing up. All right, so this is a wiggy bag out of Alaska. This is actually a Canadian licensed copy, but we don't really care. It's irrelevant, right? But what I've done is I've added to the bag. So there's the bag itself, same hood system exactly, literally exactly same hood system that Kalani Mountaineering has used since the 60s or 70s when they've were in operation or are in operation. But we don't care. It's standard, generic. Nobody owns that license or anything like that, so it's not relevant. Really, really good system here to zip the thing up inside one piece. Really makes sense. Some of these people use 2 threads or 2 strings. It's just complicated and is not more comfortable. What I've done, though, is added something, and that is the scarf. So some of the newest designs will have a scarf piece that can come down to stop that air or wind from scratching. If you don't have that, then what you do is add this. And so what I've done is I've added a scarf, literally a scarf made of fleece. And I just took an old piece of fleece and sewed it right on there. And what happens is it goes inside and then is zipped up like that, and it works. If you get a heavier weight one, then just get a slightly longer scarf. And so in my longest one here, I have a longer scarf put in. I can put it in, zip this up in my winter weight bag, and there it is. And that can then go right in here, and it stops all of the movement of air. And it makes a really big difference. And so a better bag, a thicker, heavier winter bag like this will actually make a difference because this is a better bag, right? Can you reinforce this bag with anything? Yeah, there's always one thing to think about. This, my old poncho liner, right? Part of the U.S. Army cold weather sleeping bag system. It's also effectively in the Canadian one because it's issued, but you can buy them. They're really nice, and they're number and manufacturers, but it's a synthetic blanket. So what does that mean? That means it's one extra layer of insulation. I can pull that right inside my sleeping bag. And when we talk about a little later video, I'll talk about bivy bags. You can put it in between as well. So I can put it in between, over my sleeping bag, and in the bivy bag if I want as well. This makes a difference because it's one extra layer of insulation. It's essentially like putting on another layer of clothing. And I can take it inside. What happens when you don't have that kind of design? Well, here is my old Army sleeping bag from the Canadian Army, and you can see the problem. It's designed as a two-layer system, but the foot box is straight. So you're always going to have your feet up there, and when you pull, it's going to be hard on your feet, and your feet are going to push into that because of the design. In other words, it doesn't have a proper foot box, but its real weakness is right here. There's a half-length zipper, which is great, right? So then a little bit, the foot box is fairly big, but when I zip the whole thing up, what's my problem? Right there, no hood, right? That fails because it has no hood. And you have to then have a hood, and you have to work that out. You got all sorts of problems that go with it. Now they give you a hood, and then it works so-so with a couple of balaclavas and scarves and other things. You can get by, but it's never as good as a proper mummy bag. And the proper mummy bag is also convex. It works its way down. So I'm just going to slip back to there to show you that it starts small here and works its way down to bigger up there. The better mummy bags are going to be better designed that way, and it's just going to make a better difference. So when we're looking at a bag, first, material. What material do you have? You're going to want 100% grade A goose down or a small feather bag or fill power between 700 and 1,000, right? That's it. That's high grade. Or if you're not going to buy that, buy a quality synthetic, which means 100% synthetic. That's the level that you're going to deal with, all right? So that's number one. Number two is design. So in design, what do we want? A full foot box. With a 3/4 length zipper. So the zipper does not go down to the bottom of the bag. Then you're going to want the biggest draft tube that you can have in the bag. So a big, heavy draft tube. You're then going to want the zipper to be either plastic or a lightweight aluminum or something with as less conduction as possible. So a plastic zipper nowadays is what you'd prefer. A hood that is as big or bigger than the sleeping bag, because 40% of your heat loss is head and neck, and either you put on a scarf or it has a collar built in. Either of those work. So if you want to just fix your sleeping bag because it doesn't have a scarf, just sew it on tonight. And again, that's going to be fleece if you're sewing it on, and it's going to be 100% synthetic fleece. No cotton in your fleece. All right? So 2 is design. 3 goes back to, well, how light is that? Where am I going to do it? And remember, the synthetics are less compact. They're going to take up more room. They're going to be heavier. High quality down is going to lighten that up. And it's going to make a difference. And 4th, can I supplement the sleeping bag with something else? So my wiggy bags, I actually have an inner and outer bag, so I can put a second layer. It's a 2-layer bag if that's what I want to do. So that makes a big difference. If it's 40 below or 50 below, you're going to want that. But I might just fire in my bivy bag, or say my poncho liner as an extra layer. We also might take a jacket, so a synthetic jacket or a down jacket, and put it in my bivy bag between the layer of my bivy bag and my sleeping bag as an extra layer. And that can make a big difference. So, good high quality sleeping bag, what's the really big thing to think about? Well, when you're preparing for complications, that sleeping bag and survival is a lifesaver. So if I break my leg and I have a good sleeping bag, I can just go to bed. But the other thing is, I could just go to bed on a night like this if I had my heavy sleeping bag and a bivy bag and my poncho liner. Even at 25 below, I could just go to bed. Just get my fire started in the middle of the night, go nicely to bed, heat that sleeping bag up a bit, and sleep really, really well till morning, and then light my fire again. Well, what's that? Well, that means I can get a good night's sleep. That's a big bonus. And since most of us aren't on survival situations every day, which is kind of weird, then a good high quality sleeping bag is going to make a difference between life, death, yeah, in a survival situation, but much more importantly, it's going to be between comfort and survival. And that's the last thing we need to talk about. Survival ratings, or ratings for sleeping bags. So a proper rating that you will see in the store is based on the U.S. Army Quartermaster's rating, which means it's a survival rating, not a comfort rating. And that means a young, fit volunteer achieved 2 hours sleep over an 8-hour period in that sleeping bag. I mean, you gibberishly finally went to sleep after 4 hours. That's not good. That's not what we want. That's not survival. I mean, that is survival, but that's not comfort. So when you take a rating, if the bag says this sleeping bag is rated to 0 degrees C, add 10 degrees to it. So it's good to plus 10. So last night was minus 30 outside that door, so I need a comfort rated bag to minus 40 just to make it. And that's going to be a difference. If this bag's rated to minus 10 degrees C, it's only good to minus 20, or it's only good to 0, right? So absolutely useless tonight, right? You know, if it's going to go down to 25 or 30 below tonight, that's what I'm going to need, is a better bag. So make sure the bag is rated properly. And it's just going to make a difference for you. So I hope you learned something about sleeping bags. Sleeping bag is a critical item, right? It's critical item number 12, and it's part of the gear that we prepare for complications. So in the back of my vehicle, I have a good sleeping bag. When I go out canoeing, when I go out backpacking, I always take a little bit better bag than I need, because you never know what's going to happen, and I don't want it too heavy. In other words, in the middle of summer, I don't take my big, heavy, giant wiggy bag because it's just too heavy. But I do take a good sleeping bag that's better so that I have that extra warmth. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this and hope you learned something. So if you like this useful life-saving survival knowledge you learned on this channel, then please support me by following me on YouTube, listening and liking other videos on this channel, and by following me at the Boreal Wilderness Institute on Facebook. So thank you, stay safe, and if you're stranded in the wilderness, just remember, stop and survive.